Okay. Let me talk a little bit about the methodology of these polls, because it is different than our past polls. This is our first poll of likely primary voters. In the past, we've used registered Democrats and registered Republicans. And in essence, we're going to be reporting on three separate polls today. We've got a likely Democratic primary poll, a likely Republican primary poll, and a general election poll. So first, the general election poll. We found that the Democratic candidates for governor, Dan Malloy and Ned Lamont, enjoyed double-digit leads over the three Republican candidates for governor. In the primary, we found that Ned Lamont leads Dan Malloy by 9 points among likely Democratic primary voters. And in the Republican primary, we found that Tom Foley has a huge 35-point lead over Mike Fedeli in the Republican primary. Let me talk a little bit about the Republican primary first. Anything is possible in politics, but that is a big hill to climb for Fedeli and for Oz Griebel. There's only 26 days to go until the August 10th primary, so there's not a lot of time. The other obstacles for them are that it's a very big lead. 35 points is a very big lead to overcome. And the third point is people aren't paying attention to politics during the summer. So that's going to make it tougher for them. And what attention they are paying to politics, it seems that Richard Blumenthal and Linda McMahon are getting all the attention. So it's going to be tough. Now on the Democratic side, it's a much more competitive primary. Ned Lamont leads by 9 points over Malloy. Malloy is certainly within striking distance. And in terms of the general election, what I would talk about is, the Democrats have to feel good about their lead. It's always better to be ahead than behind, but it is, far away from the November election. One other thing that you can glean from the data on the general election matchups is that it appears that Malloy and Lamont are equally strong in the general election, while on the Republican side, it seems that Tom Foley runs better against the Democrats than Oz Griebel and Mike Fedeli.
In terms of like the Republican likely primary voters, 73% say they haven't made up their mind yet, or their mind may change. What should that say about
it? It says that support is soft for the Republican candidates, and that's one of the things that you can point to if you're Oz Griebel or Mike Fedeli and say, you know what, there's plenty of room for movement here, because there are a lot of people who could still change their minds. There's also a large undecided vote at this stage, with 32% of Republicans still undecided. So, there's plenty of room for movement.
And on the Democratic side, it's 50% say they might change their minds.
So support for the Democratic candidates is stronger, but that's still a high number in terms of voters who still may change their minds. So there's still plenty of room for movement on the Democratic side as well.
Was most of this poll taken before Fedeli's ad started running, and if so, would that make a difference?
I can tell you when we began, which was Wednesday, and we finished on Tuesday of this week. You guys can correct me, but Fedeli has started his television ads within the last couple of days. Is that it?
So
maybe Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, within the past couple of days, I would say. So how much of a difference do you think that would make closing the numbers going ahead?
Television advertising can certainly help in terms of his recognition. But it's hard to say how much that'll do in terms of closing the gap in the primary.
And did you also ask about Foley's challenge of Fedeli's public funding? Was that an issue in this poll?
We asked a general question about how people feel about public financing, candidates that use public financing. We asked a general question about how voters feel about candidates that are wealthy self-funders. And the bottom line is it seems like voters don't care that much about how candidates pay for their campaigns. More than 70% said it doesn't affect their vote whether a candidate uses the public financing system, and another 70% or more said it doesn't affect their vote whether somebody is a wealthy candidate that pays for their own campaigns.
Mr. Foley's difficulties with prior arrests, is that the only thing that was asked, as opposed to his role in Iraq or his business dealings?
Yeah, that was the only controversy that we asked about regarding Tom Foley, was the arrests. And we found that it didn't really make a difference to voters. They're not paying much attention, and those Republicans that are paying attention, most said it's not going to affect their vote.
Well, more than half the voters say they're satisfied or very dissatisfied with how things are going in the state.
Yeah.
And when I look at the question where you ask will the economy get worse or better or stay the same under each of these candidates, it seems 40 in the mid 40 to the mid 40s, everybody expects the economy to stay the same. Voters in a pessimistic mood.
Yeah, I think you could say that they're not feeling very optimistic about the economy, regardless of who's elected, because we did ask that question among the likely Democratic primary voters and likely Republican primary voters. And you're right, Paul, the answer that was most frequently given was the economy is going to stay the same. So if Dan Malloy is elected, the economy is going to stay the same. If Lamont is elected, same. Foley, Griebel, Fideli, Republicans think the economy is going to stay the same.
And the Democrats, when you look in, is your opinion favorable? All the questions of the experience, the needs and problems issues, the honest, trustworthy. Democrats seem enamored with their candidates. Lamont certainly polls stronger on these questions, a bit stronger on these questions than Malloy. What do you make of that result?
A bit stronger because of greater name recognition. Yeah, you're right. The Democrats are happy with their candidates. Both candidates score high on honesty, leadership, cares about their concerns. So, the Democrats, they both enjoy high favorability ratings. Again, Lamont is better known than Malloy. One other interesting question I'd point out on the Democratic side is we asked Democrats whether they want to see somebody with years of political experience elected as governor or somebody who's a political outsider. And, of course, there's a lot of talk this election year about being the year of the outsider, but among Democrats, they want to see someone with political experience. So this is a sign that's good for Malloy. So even though he trails in the matchup, more voters say they'd rather see someone elected with political experience than being a political outsider. We found the opposite among Republicans. So that benefits Tom Foley. Republicans want to see an outsider rather than somebody with political experience.
You talked a little bit about the Senate race overshadowing these other races. Yeah. Do you think this sort of split on the outsider versus insider question sort of is a reflection of the larger Senate race, where you have McMahon, the outsider, going up against Blumenthal, the longtime political insider? Is that sort of reflective of a mood out there, or is it just, do you think you can't draw any parallels between these races?
I probably would keep them separate.
Now, this poll is different from ones in the past. You guys are polling likely voters as opposed to just registered voters. Does that mean that we should just throw out the registered voter poll results, or is this the more accurate reading?
Yeah, this is really the more accurate in terms of the matchup. The reason why we included the registered numbers for the primaries was simply for the trend, to see if there was any significant movement on either side.
So does this mean that, for example, the Democratic race is a lot more closer than we originally anticipated, based on the poll results from today?
Yeah, it is closer when we look at the likely voters. Yeah, when we get down to the people that we think are most likely to vote, it is a closer race.
Because, for example, like Lamont, I believe they just released a statement like maybe about an hour ago saying that they're still gaining with registered voters, but now we're looking at the likely voters, so that kind of just throws that out.
I would focus on the likelies. That's what I think is the most accurate measure of where the race stands right now.
And in terms of Lamont, when I was looking through the poll, it seems Democrats are more impressed with his challenge to Joe Lieberman in 2006 than his experience as a businessman. It was like 48% say they're more likely to vote for him because of the challenge to Lieberman, and 31% say they're more likely to vote for him because of his business background.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. And I think that also goes to this question about experience versus being an outsider. They're not as, for at least Democrats, his business experience is not as important as Malloy's experience as mayor of Stanford.
Yeah, but Lamont seems to, out of all the candidates, Democrats and Republicans, he seems to score the highest, if I read right, on the economy will get better if he's elected. I think it's 37% with him and 29% with Malloy, which I think exceeds the highest of the three Republicans.
Yeah, I think that is his. One of the things you can look at is that Lamont does score better on that economy question that we asked. Lamont scores better than Malloy on that question. Although, again, coming back to your original point, they're still not especially optimistic, since most still say with Lamont the economy would still stay the same.
Right. I mean, the entire focus has been on jobs, the
right.
deficit. We have to cut this deficit, and dealing with that is almost to the exclusion of most other things. So what are people really concerned with if they think, no matter who's in there, 4 years, it's not going to happen?
Yeah.
Anything in there that tells us that, what they really want done or think can be done?
Yeah, not in this poll. We didn't get into specifics about jobs beyond just that one question that we asked about the candidates and how they're being elected could affect the economy.
Yeah. I mean, Foley came out of nowhere. Really, he wasn't on the scene until he started running ads and has consistently run ads, and now he's more of a household name. Is it really too late for Fideli at this point? I mean, if it's really television that sort of gets you out there.
I wouldn't say that it's too late. Again, I would say that it is a big hill to climb, and there's not much time left for Fideli or for Griebel. But anything is possible in politics. And what Fideli and Griebel have going for them is the more than 70% who say they could still change their minds. And you've got another 32% who are undecided in the race. So.
And again, TV ads could be will be the big difference here in the closing weeks of the campaign.
Although you never know. Is there going to be some August surprise, or you just don't know.
What does it say about the amount of money that Mr. Lamont has raised as opposed to Malloy? I mean, they're so close. Has his money really not been a factor, or is not?
Well, I think it has been a factor. It certainly has helped him in terms of his name recognition and given him his lead. He is better known than Malloy, and for months. He was advertising, and it helped him get that lead. So it certainly has been a factor.
And so you said yes, the privately funded versus publicly funded.
Yeah, I think that's in the general election poll. Was it the last couple of questions, or maybe before the last three? I think. Is it there?
I don't quite see it.
If it's not there, then it'll be in tomorrow's poll.
Okay. All right. I can look through it. You're going to be up there, so I can ask you a question. Okay.
It's possible it's tomorrow's release.
Yeah, no. Okay.
Right. There's been other polls that have shown support generally for the public financing system, but this is a different question.
It's a different question. We've never asked this kind of a question before, in Connecticut at least.
Whether you care whether you're the person you support.
Whether it affects your vote. Right. Whether how someone pays for their campaigns affects your vote.
Oh, okay.
It may have been in tomorrow's release.
Yeah, I think it's going to be in tomorrow. I'm just scanning this and I don't see it in your summary.
Can you just state your name and title?
I'm Doug Schwartz, the director of the Quinnipiac University poll.
How do you spell the last name?
SCHWARTZ.
You set?
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Doug.